What if I told you that before Lionel Messi lifted the World Cup in 2022, he received a message from beyond the grave? A message that would change everything he thought he knew about destiny, pressure, and the man whose shadow he could never escape. This is not just a story about football. This is a story about two souls, forever intertwined by the dreams of a nation that demands nothing less than immortality from its heroes. It begins in the streets of Buenos Aires, where football is not a game, but a religion, where legends are not born but forged in the fire of impossible expectations. And no one understood this fire better than Diego Armando Maradona. In the barrios of Villa Fiorito, where poverty painted every wall and hope was the only currency that mattered, a young boy with tangled black hair and eyes full of defiance kicked a leather ball as if his life depended on it. Because it did. Diego was small, smaller than the other boys, but when the ball touched his feet, something magical happened. The world bent to his will. Gravity forgot its rules. Time slowed down just to watch him dance. His family lived in a tiny house with a corrugated metal roof that leaked when it rained. His father worked in a factory, his mother cleaned houses, and there were 7 children competing for attention, for food, for space to dream. But Diego didn't need space. He needed only a ball and a patch of dirt, and he could transport himself anywhere, become anyone, transcend everything that tried to hold him down. The neighbors would gather to watch him play, this small boy who moved like water, who saw passes that didn't exist until he created them, who scored goals that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Old men who had seen generations of talented children come and go would shake their heads in wonder. "This one is different," they would whisper. "This one is touched by God." By the age of 10, Diego Maradona was already a myth in the making. Scouts whispered his name like a prayer. Coaches watched in disbelief as this tiny child humiliated players twice his size with moves that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Argentina had found its chosen one, the boy who would carry their dreams to heights no one had ever reached. At Argentinos Juniors, he made his professional debut at 15 years old. 15. Still a child, but playing against grown men who tried to kick him, push him, break him. They couldn't. Every foul only made him more determined. Every challenge only sharpened his skills. He would get knocked down, pop back up with that mischievous smile, and dribble past 3 more defenders as if to say, "You cannot stop me. You can only watch." The fans fell in love immediately. Here was someone who played the way they dreamed of playing, who represented everything beautiful about Argentine football: the flair, the audacity, the absolute refusal to be intimidated by anyone or anything. Diego wasn't just talented, he was fearless. And in a country that had suffered political turmoil, economic collapse, and military dictatorship, fearlessness was everything, and carry them he did. Through the youth academies, through Argentinos Juniors, where he became a sensation, through Boca Juniors, where he became a god among men, arriving at La Bombonera and immediately understanding what it meant to wear that sacred yellow and blue shirt. Boca wasn't just a club, it was an identity, a religion, a way of life for millions of Argentines who saw football as their escape from hardship. Diego gave them magic. He gave them moments they would tell their grandchildren about. And then he left for Barcelona, for European glory, where the world would discover what Argentina had always known, that Diego Maradona was something beyond special. Barcelona was supposed to be his coronation, but it became a battlefield. The Spanish defenders targeted him mercilessly, trying to injure him, trying to end his career before it could truly flourish. And one day, they nearly succeeded. A brutal tackle shattered his ankle, leaving him broken, in pain, facing the possibility that the magic might be over. But Diego came back. He always came back. And when Barcelona couldn't quite appreciate what they had, when the politics and the pressure became too much, he found his true home in the most unlikely place, Napoli, a struggling club in southern Italy, in a city that northern Italians looked down upon, in a team that had never won anything significant. Diego saw himself in that city, in those people who were dismissed, underestimated, written off. And he decided to give them what he had given Villa Fiorito, what he had given Argentina: hope. Through Barcelona, where he proved his genius to the world despite the injuries and the disappointments, and finally to Napoli, where he transformed an entire city's destiny. He didn't just play for Napoli, he carried them on his back, dragging them from mid-table mediocrity to Serie A champions. Not once, but twice, defeating the wealthy northern clubs who thought they owned Italian football. He gave Naples their first Scudetto, their first taste of glory, and they loved him with an intensity that transcended sport. Murals of Diego appeared on buildings throughout the city. Babies were named after him. He became more than a footballer. He became a symbol of what was possible when someone refused to accept the limitations others placed on them. But it was Mexico 1986 that would cement Diego Maradona as something beyond human, something eternal. The quarterfinal against England was not just a match, it was a reckoning. It was Argentina's chance to reclaim honor after the Falklands War, the Malvinas conflict that had ended in humiliation just 4 years earlier, to show the world that they would not be broken, would not be forgotten. The tension was unbearable. Every Argentine understood what this match meant. It was about more than football. It was about national pride, about dignity, about revenge served cold on a football pitch. And Diego delivered the impossible. First, a goal that would be debated forever, a moment of cunning and audacity that he would later call the hand of God. Leaping with England's goalkeeper, Peter Shilton, Diego punched the ball into the net with his left fist, disguising it so perfectly that the referee saw nothing wrong, and the goal stood. Argentina led 1-0. England protested furiously, but the goal remained. Diego would later say it was scored partly by the hand of God, partly by the head of Maradona, and all of Argentina understood the poetry in that statement. Sometimes justice requires a little divine intervention. Then, just 4 minutes later, something that needed no debate, no explanation, only awe. Picking up the ball near the halfway line, Diego embarked on a journey that would be replayed 1,000,000 times, each viewing more breathtaking than the last. He glided past one defender, then another, his body swaying left and right in a rhythm only he could hear, the ball seemingly glued to his left foot as if connected by an invisible string, until finally, having dribbled past half the English team, having turned Wembley legends into traffic cones, he slipped it past the goalkeeper and into the net. The goal of the century. The moment when a man became a god. The commentator's voice cracked with emotion, nearly screaming, calling it the best goal in World Cup history, even as it was still unfolding. And Diego, after scoring, sprinted toward the corner flag with his fist raised, his face a mixture of joy and defiance, as if to say, "This is what Argentina is capable of. This is what we can do when you try to break us." Argentina won that match 2-1. They went on to win the tournament, defeating West Germany in the final, and Diego Maradona had fulfilled his destiny. He had given his people what they craved most: validation, glory, immortality. He stood on top of the world, lifting the golden trophy in the Azteca Stadium, the crown heavy but golden on his head, his name chanted by millions, his legacy secure. But crowns, especially those placed by entire nations, come with a price. The years that followed were a descent. The pressure that had forged Diego into greatness now began to crush him. The same streets that had made him a hero now whispered about his demons, his struggles, his battles with addiction, his falls from grace. The media that had once praised him now hunted him, documenting every mistake, every scandal, every moment of weakness. Diego had given everything to football, to Argentina, to the world, and now the world wanted more, always more, and he had nothing left to give except his pain. Italia 1990 ended in heartbreak. A final loss to Germany, Diego in tears, still fighting, still trying to carry his nation one more time, but unable to reclaim the magic. His ankle, shattered years before in Barcelona, never fully healed. His body, abused by years of brutal tackles and his own excesses, was failing him. But still, he played. Still, he tried. The final was a cruel, ugly match, decided by a questionable penalty. And when the whistle blew, Diego wept on the pitch, knowing this might be his last chance at glory, and it had slipped away. USA 1994 was worse, much worse. A scandal, a positive drug test after just 2 matches, a humiliating exit that tarnished the legend. The image of Diego screaming into the camera after scoring against Greece, eyes wide and wild, became a symbol of everything wrong with hero worship, with the impossible pressures we place on those we elevate. The god had become human again, flawed, vulnerable, tragic. Diego Maradona's story became a warning as much as an inspiration. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful how high you climb. Because Argentina never forgets, never forgives, and never stops comparing every talented young player to the impossible standard Diego had set. Which brings us to Rosario, June 24th, 1987. In a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood, another boy was born. Jorge and Celia Messi named him Lionel Andres, never knowing that this tiny baby would one day carry the same impossible burden that had broken Diego Maradona, never imagining that their son would be compared to the greatest Argentine footballer who had ever lived. Lionel was even smaller than Diego had been, unnaturally small, diagnosed at age 11 with a growth hormone deficiency that threatened to end his football dreams before they could begin. Every injection cost money his family didn't have. His father worked in a steel factory, his mother cleaned houses, and they watched their youngest son, this quiet boy who barely spoke, but who played football with the same magic Diego had possessed, slowly realize that his body might betray him before he could show the world what he was capable of. His local club, Newell's Old Boys, couldn't afford the treatment. River Plate showed interest, but backed away when they learned the cost. Argentina, the nation that had produced Diego Maradona, that claimed to worship football above all else, couldn't find a way to help one of its most talented children. The irony was bitter. The country that expected miracles from its footballers couldn't provide basic medical care to nurture them. But Barcelona could. And so, at 13 years old, Lionel Messi left his homeland, left his family, left his grandmother, who had been his biggest supporter, left everything he knew, and moved to Spain with nothing but a contract signed on a napkin by Carles Rexach, Barcelona's sporting director, who had watched this small boy play for 15 minutes and immediately understood he was witnessing something extraordinary. The loneliness was crushing. Lionel arrived in a foreign country where he didn't speak the language, where the culture was different, where the other boys in this academy teased him for being so small, so quiet, so obviously homesick. The treatment was painful, daily injections of growth hormone that made him feel sick, different, broken. He would call his mother in Argentina and cry, begging to come home, and she would cry with him, but tell him to stay, to endure, to chase his dream. But when he stepped onto the pitch, when the ball found his left foot, something familiar happened. The world bent. Gravity forgot. Time slowed, just like Diego. The coaches at La Masia, Barcelona's famed academy, couldn't believe what they were seeing. This tiny Argentine boy was doing things they had never witnessed before, dribbling through entire teams, scoring goals from impossible angles, creating magic with every touch. The comparison started immediately. The new Maradona, the heir to the throne, the next Argentine Messiah, and Lionel Messi, quiet, humble, almost painfully shy, wanted none of it. He didn't want to be the next anyone. He just wanted to play football, to make his family proud, to justify the sacrifices they had made for him. But Argentina doesn't work that way. Argentina needed another god, and Lionel Messi, whether he liked it or not, was the chosen one. He conquered Europe with a brilliance that surpassed even Diego. 4 Champions League titles with Barcelona, 10 La Liga championships, more than 600 goals for the club. Goal after goal after goal, each one more impossible than the last. The chip over the goalkeeper from 30 yards. The solo run from the halfway line against Getafe that was frame by frame identical to Diego's goal against England. The header in the Champions League final against Manchester United, this small player out-jumping taller defenders as if physics had temporarily suspended its rules just for him. He broke every record, won every individual award, collected Ballon d'Ors the way other players collected yellow cards. He earned comparisons not just to Maradona, but to Pelé, to the greatest who had ever lived. Barcelona worshipped him. The world recognized him as the best player of his generation, perhaps of any generation. Cristiano Ronaldo pushed him, challenged him, created the greatest rivalry football had ever seen. But most neutral observers believed Lionel was simply on another level, playing a different game, seeing dimensions of football that others couldn't perceive. But Argentina was different. Every summer, Lionel would return to wear the albiceleste, the sacred white and sky blue stripes that carried the weight of a nation's soul. And every summer, despite his brilliance, despite his goals, despite carrying teams that had no right to reach finals, he would fall short. Copa America, 2007, the final in Venezuela, lost to Brazil. Lionel was just 20 years old, still learning, but Argentina expected instant glory. World Cup 2014, the final in Rio de Janeiro, the Maracanã Stadium filled with screaming fans, Argentina so close to glory they could taste it. Lionel played brilliantly throughout the tournament, dragging an average team to the final through sheer willpower. But in the championship match against Germany in extra time, Mario Götze scored and Argentina's dream died. Lionel received the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player, but he looked at the trophy with hollow eyes, understanding that Argentina didn't want individual awards. They wanted the World Cup. They wanted him to be Diego in Mexico 1986, lifting the golden trophy, giving them glory. Copa America 2015, the final in Chile, lost on penalties. Lionel had scored in the shootout, done his part, but it wasn't enough. Copa America 2016, the final in New Jersey, lost on penalties again. This time, Lionel took his penalty and blazed it over the crossbar, and when the match ended in defeat, when he had fallen short once more, something inside him broke. He walked to the microphone, tears streaming down his face, and announced his retirement from international football at just 29 years old. The criticism was merciless. He doesn't bleed for the shirt. He's not Argentine enough. He's too European. He grew up in Spain. He doesn't understand what it means to be from Argentina. He's not like Diego. Diego gave us everything. Diego won us the World Cup. Diego bled for Argentina. What has Messi given us? Heartbreak, disappointment, 4 finals lost. The promise of greatness that never quite arrives when we need it most. Pelé won 3 World Cups. Maradona won 1. Messi has won nothing. The words cut deeper than any tackle, hurt more than any injury. Lionel had given Argentina everything he had, played through pain, carried teams that had no business reaching finals, and still it wasn't enough. Still, he was measured against Diego and found wanting. Lionel came back, of course, because real love, even toxic love, is impossible to abandon. His teammates begged him, his family convinced him, and somewhere deep inside, he understood that his story with Argentina wasn't finished, couldn't be finished, not like this. But the shadow of Diego Maradona grew longer with every passing year, every tournament that ended without the trophy that mattered most. And Diego himself, living his complicated life in the public eye, sometimes defended Lionel, sometimes questioned him, always reminding everyone that there was only one true Argentine football god, and it wasn't the quiet boy from Rosario. In interviews, Diego would praise Lionel's talent, but question his leadership. He would say Lionel was the best in the world, but hint that he lacked the fire, the passion, the Argentine soul that Diego possessed. The comments were never quite harsh enough to be cruel, but never quite kind enough to be supportive. It was complicated, this relationship between the past and present, between the fallen god and the rising star. Then came 2020, November 25th, 2020. The news broke like thunder across Argentina, across the world. Diego Armando Maradona was dead. Heart attack, age 60. Gone. The nation stopped. Streets filled with mourners. People who had never met Diego wept as if they had lost a family member. The presidential palace draped in black. 3 days of national mourning declared. Thousands lined up outside the presidential palace where Diego's body lay in state, desperate for one last glimpse, one final moment with the man who had given them so much joy. Argentina wept for its fallen god, its flawed hero, its eternal number 10, the man who had given them everything and taken everything from himself in the process. The flags flew at half-mast. The football stadium stood empty and silent, and everyone, regardless of age or background, had a Diego story to tell. A memory of where they were when he scored that goal, when he lifted that trophy, when he made them believe that anything was possible. And Lionel Messi, preparing for another season with Barcelona, another year of chasing the ghost, felt something break inside him. Not relief that the comparisons might finally stop, not freedom from the shadow, but grief. profound, unexpected grief. Because Diego had been more than just a burden. He had been a mirror, showing Lionel what greatness looked like and what it cost. He had been a cautionary tale, yes, but also an inspiration. Proof that an Argentine boy from nothing could become everything. Diego had shown that talent combined with fearlessness could conquer the world. And now he was gone, and the torch that Lionel had spent his whole career trying to carry alongside him suddenly felt impossibly heavy, because now he would have to carry it alone. Lionel posted a tribute on social media, a photo of young Diego in his Argentina jersey alongside a simple message. A very sad day for all Argentines and for football. He leaves us but does not leave, because Diego is eternal. The words were careful, measured, but those who knew Lionel understood the depth of emotion behind them. The funeral was a spectacle of sorrow. Hundreds of thousands lined the streets of Buenos Aires, trying to get close to the funeral procession, desperate to say goodbye. Clashes broke out between mourners and police. The whole thing was chaos, a reflection of Diego's life, intense and uncontrollable and overwhelming. But it was what happened after, in the quiet moments, that changed everything. Diego's family, going through his belongings in the weeks following his death, found something unexpected. A letter, handwritten in Diego's messy scrawl, dated just weeks before his death, addressed to Lionel Messi. The family debated what to do. Diego's relationship with Lionel had been complicated, public, sometimes supportive, sometimes critical, always intense. But this letter was different. It was private. It was honest. It was the truth Diego had carried, but never quite been able to say out loud. The words he had wanted to speak but couldn't, not while he was alive, not while his pride and his ego and his own complicated legacy got in the way. They sent it to Lionel. What the letter said has never been fully revealed. Lionel has kept it private, sacred, too personal to share with a world that had already taken so much from both of them. But those close to him say it changed him. That Diego's words, written in his final weeks when he knew his health was failing, when he knew time was running out, gave Lionel something he had been searching for his entire career: permission. Permission to be himself. Permission to carry the weight his own way. Permission to understand that he didn't need to be Diego Maradona. He needed to be Lionel Messi. And that was enough. More than enough. The letter spoke of regret, they say. Diego's regret that he had added to the pressure instead of lifting it. That he had sometimes been harsh when he should have been supportive. That he understood, better than anyone, what it meant to carry Argentina's dreams on your shoulders, to feel the weight of millions of people expecting miracles, and that Lionel had carried them with more grace and dignity than Diego ever had. That Lionel had faced criticism Diego never endured, played in an era of social media where every mistake was magnified, every failure dissected, and through it all, Lionel had maintained his humility, his dedication, his love for the game. The letter said that Lionel's journey wasn't over, that the World Cup, the one trophy that had eluded him, the one prize that would silence every critic and fulfill every dream, was still waiting, and that when the moment came, Diego would be watching, not with judgment, but with pride, with the pride of someone who had walked the same path, climbed the same mountain, and understood exactly how difficult the journey was. Diego wrote that he was sorry for not being the mentor Lionel deserved, for allowing his own complicated relationship with fame and pressure to prevent him from offering guidance. He wrote that he saw himself in Lionel, not just the talent, but the burden, the impossible expectations, the way Argentina loved and criticized in equal measure. And he wrote that Lionel was stronger than he had been, better at handling the pressure, more deserving of the glory that was coming. Lionel folded the letter carefully, placed it in his wallet, and carried it with him everywhere. A talisman, a reminder, a blessing from beyond. Copa America 2021 arrived like a chance at redemption. Brazil, the host, Argentina's eternal rival, and another final. The pressure was immense. 4 previous finals lost. The critics sharpening their knives, waiting for Lionel to fail again, to confirm their belief that he was not Diego, could never be Diego, would always fall short when it mattered most. But this time, something was different. This time, Lionel played not with the desperate hunger of someone trying to prove, something, but with the calm confidence of someone who had finally accepted his destiny. He touched the letter in his wallet before every match, drew strength from Diego's words, and led Argentina through the tournament with masterful performances. He created goals, scored goals, inspired goals. He played with freedom, with joy, with the understanding that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. And his teammates, this young generation that had grown up watching him, that understood his struggles, that loved him not as a god but as a brother, played with the same freedom. The final at the Maracana, in the heart of enemy territory, in the stadium where Argentina had lost the World Cup final 7 years earlier. Brazil at home expected to win. But Argentina had Lionel, and this time Lionel had Diego's blessing. Angel Di Maria scored the only goal, a beautiful chip over the goalkeeper in the first half. And then Argentina defended, fought, suffered, but held on. When the final whistle blew, when Argentina had finally won a major tournament with Lionel Messi, when 28 years of hurt had ended, Lionel dropped to his knees and wept. Not the bitter tears of 2016, but tears of release, of joy, of finally breaking through. His teammates mobbed him, lifting him on their shoulders, carrying him around the pitch as the Argentine fans who had traveled to Brazil sang his name. And Lionel, clutching his first major trophy with the national team at age 34, looked up at the sky and whispered something no one else could hear. "Thank you, Diego." The trophy tour back in Argentina was unlike anything the country had seen in years. Millions poured into the streets. Lionel, always uncomfortable with public displays, smiled genuinely for perhaps the first time in his international career. The criticism didn't stop completely. Argentina still wanted the World Cup. But something had shifted. Lionel had broken the curse. He had won something. And maybe, just maybe, more was possible. But there was still one mountain left to climb. Qatar 2022 arrived with Argentina among the favorites, but with the eternal question still hanging in the air. Could Lionel Messi finally win the World Cup? Could he complete the journey Diego had completed in Mexico 36 years earlier? Could he silence every doubt, answer every comparison, and claim his place not as the next Maradona, but as Lionel Messi, World Cup champion? This would be his last chance. At 35 years old, Lionel knew another World Cup was impossible. This was it. Everything he had worked for, everything he had endured, every criticism, every comparison, every sleepless night, wondering if he would ever be enough. It all came down to this tournament in the desert, this final opportunity to complete his legacy. The tournament started disastrously. A shocking loss to Saudi Arabia in the opening match, 2-1. Argentina's World Cup dreams seemingly over before they had truly begun. The critics sharpened their knives. Here we go again. Messi can't deliver when it matters. The curse continues. Even at 35, with all his experience, he still can't win the big one. But Lionel, touching the letter in his wallet before every match, remained calm. This team was different. This Argentina, young and hungry, believed in him not as a god, but as a captain, a leader, a human being who had bled for the shirt more than anyone. Emiliano Martinez in goal, fearless and vocal. Rodrigo de Paul in midfield, calling Lionel the best in the world to anyone who would listen. Julian Alvarez up front, young and quick and grateful for the chance to play alongside his idol. Enzo Fernandez, just 21 years old, playing like a veteran. And Lionel, freed from the need to be perfect, played the best football of his life. Mexico, defeated 2-0, Lionel scoring a crucial goal from outside the box. Poland, defeated 2-0, Argentina topping their group despite the opening loss. Australia, defeated 2-1 in the round of 16, Lionel creating and scoring. Netherlands survived in a quarterfinal that went to penalties after a wild 2-2 draw, one of the most intense matches in World Cup history. Lionel scoring from the spot. Argentina advancing on penalties with Martinez as the hero. Croatia in the semifinal, and Lionel delivered a performance so complete, so magical, that even Diego would have been proud. A goal from the penalty spot, an assist for Alvarez where he dribbled past the Croatian defender with the same grace he had shown for 20 years, and a 3-0 victory that sent Argentina to the final. At 35 years old, playing in his 5th World Cup, Lionel Messi had one more match to play. December 18th, 2022, The final. Argentina versus France. Lusail Stadium. The entire world watching. Over 1 billion people tuned in, making it the most watched sporting event in history. Everyone wanted to see if Lionel could finally complete the story. The match was epic, a back-and-forth thriller that will be remembered forever. Lionel scored twice, once from the penalty spot in the first half, cool and composed, sending the French goalkeeper the wrong way. Then, in extra time, a scramble in the box, the ball falling to Lionel, pure instinct taking over, smashing it into the net to give Argentina a 3-2 lead with just minutes remaining. But Kylian Mbappé, brilliant and relentless, the heir to Lionel's throne, completed his hat trick, the first in a World Cup final since 1966, equalizing at 3-3 with just seconds remaining, taking the final to penalties, the cruelest way to decide football's greatest prize. Lionel had already taken his penalty in the 2016 Copa America final shootout, already lived through that nightmare, but this time he insisted on going first, leading, setting the tone, showing his teammates that he wasn't afraid, that he believed that they could do this. He placed the ball on the spot, stepped back, and as he prepared to run, he felt it. A presence, warm, familiar, the ghost that had haunted him, the shadow that had defined him, the legend that had both inspired and tormented him. Diego, standing beside him, not as a judge, but as a companion, a fellow traveler who understood exactly what this moment meant. The penalty was perfect, bottom right corner, unstoppable. The goalkeeper dived, but he had no chance. 1-0 to Argentina in the shootout. France scored. Leandro Paredes missed. France scored again. Paulo Dybala scored. France missed. Gonzalo Montiel stepped up for the 4th Argentine penalty, needing to score to win the World Cup. He scored, low to the left. And the referee blew the final whistle. Argentina, world champions. Lionel Messi, world champion. When Gonzalo Montiel scored the winning penalty. When the referee blew the final whistle. When Argentina became world champions for the first time since 1986, since Diego's tournament, Lionel collapsed. His teammates buried him in a mountain of blue and white jerseys, all of them screaming, crying, releasing decades of the pressure in one perfect moment of joy. When Lionel finally emerged, when he was handed the trophy by the Emir of Qatar, when the golden prize that had eluded him, his entire career was finally in his hands. He lifted it high above his head, and the flash of cameras turned the night into day. The confetti fell in gold and blue, the colors of Argentina, and Lionel held the trophy and wept, and everyone watching understood that this was more than just a sporting achievement. This was the completion of a story 35 years in the making. But those who were close to him, those who knew about the letter, saw something else. They saw him mouth 2 words, looking up at the sky, tears streaming down his face. The weight of a nation finally lifted from his shoulders. We did it, not I, we, because he wasn't alone. He had never been alone. Diego had been there, in every match, every goal, every moment of doubt and triumph. Not as a shadow or a burden, but as a guide, a companion, a fellow traveler on the impossible journey of being Argentina's chosen one. The letter remained in Lionel's wallet, carried through every match of that tournament, a source of strength when the pressure mounted, a reminder when the doubts crept in, a connection to the man who had walked this path before him and understood, truly understood, what it cost. And though the world will never know every word Diego wrote, the message was clear enough in what Lionel achieved. He had honored Diego not by becoming him, not by copying him, not by trying to recreate what Diego had done in Mexico 1986, but by completing what they had both started, what every Argentine footballer starts the moment they first kick a ball in the streets of Buenos Aires, Rosario, Cordoba, or Villa Fiorito. The dream of making an entire nation believe in magic again. 2 souls, separated by time, united by destiny. One who climbed the mountain and stumbled on the way down, whose journey ended in tragedy, but whose legend remained eternal. One who climbed it more slowly, more carefully, facing criticism that would have broken lesser men, carrying the weight of both their dreams. And when he finally reached the summit, when he held the trophy that meant everything, he understood the truth Diego had tried to tell him in that letter. The shadow was never a burden. It was a blessing. Because Diego Maradona, flawed and brilliant and utterly human, had shown Lionel Messi exactly what it meant to be Argentine, to love football with every fiber of your being, to give everything even when everything isn't enough, and to understand that greatness isn't about perfection. It's about heart. It's about passion. It's about resilience. It's about standing back up every time you get knocked down. It's about carrying your people's dreams, even when they're too heavy, even when you fall, even when the world says you're not enough. And on December 18th, 2022, Lionel Messi proved that he was more than enough. He was exactly what Argentina needed. Not a god, not a ghost, but a man who became a legend by staying true to himself, by honoring those who came before, by learning from Diego's mistakes without judging them, and by finally, beautifully, completing the story that Diego Maradona had begun so many years ago in the dusty streets where dreams are born. The torch had been passed, the message had been received, and Argentina at last could celebrate both of its chosen ones, forever intertwined, forever remembered, forever loved. Two numbers, two legends, one eternal bond, 10, the number they both wore, the number that carries the weight of Argentine football on its back, the number that represents everything beautiful and painful about being the chosen one. And now, finally, both of them could rest, knowing they had given their nation what it craved most: glory, magic, and the belief that anything, absolutely anything, is possible when you play with the heart of Argentina beating in your chest, when you honor the legends who came before, when you understand that you're not just playing for yourself, but for millions who see their dreams reflected in your success. Diego gave Argentina 1986. Lionel gave them 2022, and in between those two tournaments, 36 years of heartbreak, hope, comparison, and finally, completion. The story of two boys from poverty who became immortal. The story of a shadow that became a blessing. The story of a letter that changed everything. This is the legacy of Messi and Maradona, two souls bound across time, forever united in the eternal dance of Argentine football.